Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to Studio 770. We are with Dr. Michael Sokol. Michael, thank you so much for joining us again.
My pleasure.
It seems like I'm somewhere between heaven and earth, so I think this will have to be more about you. My tradition in Studio 770 is I introduce myself in case somebody doesn't know me, and then I ask the guest, and then we'll get into the topic. So just very briefly, I'm the host of KabbalahWisdom.org. I've written, thank God, over 20 books on Jewish mysticism. And what I try to do is take practical tips from Jewish mysticism on how to better our lives. And one of the very important things in life is being healthy, eating healthy. I don't know if you know this, doctor, but the Baal Shem Tov said, not sure if I'm getting it right, but somehow it's right. The Baal Shem Tov said that a small hole in the body is a big hole in the soul. And his disciple, the Maggid, said that a small hole in the soul is a big hole in the body. So you could confirm, and I'd just like to get into the intro. If I could just ask you for a second to maybe introduce yourself and
Sure.
maybe your qualifications, and then we could go to the topic.
Sure. My name is Michael Sokol. I was born and raised in Akron, Ohio, and have lived in the Overland Park, Kansas City area since 1993. So going on 27 and a half years, almost 28 years now. I have a practice that involves internal medicine, endocrinology, and psychiatry. I'm board certified in all of those fields. I have, thank God, a wonderful relationship with the members of our Jewish community and our Chabad rabbis here in town. And it's my pleasure to share with you the information that I've acquired over these years.
Great, fantastic. So using your principle of KISS, keep it simple, stupid. So it's really important kind of to give people a holistic way. We all know now that we have to eat healthy. I think that there was a time where we thought, okay, we can get sick and go to the doctor, but preventative care is very, very important. And I just saw, I was going on the Harvard site of nutrition, very good Harvard nutrition, where they're saying clearly, fiber being a 40%, and these are based on their own massive study, 40% reduction in cardiovascular disease. Obviously, fruits and vegetables, these tremendously profound importance of how we eat. We know exercise, very important. Obviously, thinking healthy. You're a psychiatrist, so you could also help us not only on the physical, but also maybe on the emotional and the thinking. And doing good. I think that makes us feel good. So I just wanted to ask you if you could share with us, please, what is the simple, accurate, perhaps you could share some of the evidence why we know this to be true, mechanisms of how to live a healthy, perhaps mentally as well as physically a healthy life.
Okay. I will try to recall the data off the top of my head as best I can. Let me start with exercise, because that's the one that comes to my mind first. The last time we spoke, Rabbi Zev, I mentioned about 30 minutes daily. That data comes from weight loss studies where they examined behavioral change, not only in eating habits and eating styles, but exercise. And those individuals who lost the most weight not only followed changes in their quantity of food that they ate, but that there was a step up in weight loss that occurred from people who exercised 3 to 4 days a week to those who exercised 7 days a week. And that had to be a minimum of 30 minutes of something that made you sweat. It doesn't matter what it is. So that the success with weight loss comes with daily exercise, greater than or equal to 30 minutes, above and beyond whatever changes you make in diet. And that's been reliably repeated that experiment. Additionally, in those people who lost weight, who wanted to maintain weight loss, exercise is the way to help maintain relative weight loss. In other words, a lot of people tend to regain weight over time. Those that exercise a minimum of 30 minutes, 7 days a week are less likely to regain weight than those that do not. So I really make the comparison to, it's like, you know, saying the Shema twice a day or putting on tefillin. It's of that degree of importance.
Right.
So that's the data behind exercise. The data behind sleep is interesting. Obviously, different individuals have different sleep requirements for their cognitive functioning during the day. The sort of rough average is most people require greater than or equal to 7 hours of sleep where they're clearly, you know, eyes closed, they don't remember what happened during that time. And that range can be anywhere between 7 hours and 8.5 hours for the large majority of people. Those individuals who consistently get less sleep than that 7 hours are more likely to have auto accidents, are more likely to have self-reported emotional outbursts or emotional incontinence. That's a term I borrowed from one of my professors. I like that term quite a bit. And are more likely to make mistakes on valid and reliable tests that involve memory or mathematics.
Wow.
So that's the data regarding sleep and the data regarding exercise. Diet is a bit more of an interesting field in the sense that there are a lot of ways of either maintaining one's weight or losing weight. Fasting is all the rage at the moment, and there's like a million different ways of fasting. I'm not saying that's the guaranteed way of losing weight. It is a way of taking in less calories. There's no question about that. But I suspect, again, my own personal bias, that just getting in the habit of eating less food at each meal is more likely to guarantee weight loss than someone who has to vigorously plan their days or hours of fasting. I don't believe we have 5 and 10-year data yet to show us the comparison between those two approaches. Also, the concept of a low-fat diet versus a low-carbohydrate diet and high protein has application if you are pre-diabetic or diabetic. You would want the low carbohydrate diet. However, if the risk for type 2 diabetes is very low, then you have options with regards to how you wish to go about a diet. And a diet is most successful if you're able to first figure out what your average calorie intake is for the previous month per day, and then reduce that by 500 calories daily. If you can reduce that by 500 calories daily, you're very likely to lose approximately a pound a week, because 7 times 500 is 3,500, and that's calories, and that's equivalent to approximately a pound.
Mm-hmm. 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 Okay, and in terms of healthy eating, what would be your recommendation to have a healthy eating?
So it depends who you read, but you made reference to this before we got started. But the higher the fiber diet, the more likely you are to have no complaints regarding your bowels. Mm-hmm. The more likely you are to not take in foods that are high calorie with little nutritional value, because your stomach is expanded already with the fiber, so that sense of hunger will be diminished. Mm-hmm. So I would first appeal to having as high a fiber diet as is reasonable. The goal is approximately 40 grams per day, which seems like a lot for some people, but it's really a very, very good approach. And like anything in life, you need to look at what are the things that you eat and what are the things that you don't eat that have fiber in them, and what can you adapt to your diet. Having done that, then the next most important factor would be vegetables, and then closely followed by protein, and then fruit last. This issue of whole wheat and wheat is of lower priority. It's not of no priority, but it's lower priority. And if you notice, I put vegetables above meat, not by much. And when I say meat, I include fish and chicken when I say that. I should probably say protein, because that also includes egg whites and tofu and beans, other sources of protein, and certain types of nuts as well. And then I would put fruit below all that. Very good, very helpful, high in fiber with regards to certain types of fruit, such as cantaloupe or apples. I think I would leave it there. I would leave you with this sort of thought that, when I say leave, I would share this thought that the more variation in color of the things that you eat, not referring to protein, but referring to vegetables and fruit, the more likely you are to get all the nutrients that you need.
Somebody told me yesterday that if vegetables, like if you juice vegetables and they're left out for a day, they lose their nutrients. Is that true?
The bottom line is I don't know that answer. I'm sure that answer is available, but I do not know that answer.
Fair enough.
Obviously, if you're juicing something and you're not drinking it, there are two issues. One is, are you wasting any of your time or wasting those vegetables in any way? And number two is, it's always better to eat your vegetables and fruit rather than drink them. It's always better. You're more likely to get more nutrients that way.
Oh, I see. So what would be, if I can ask you, based on what you said, that we should be focused on 40 grams of fiber, we should put after that vegetables, and then kind of
closely followed by protein.
Yeah, closely followed by protein, and then fruits. So what would be like a typical maybe day, the meals, what should that look like?
So I encourage people to go to sources that they trust and look at the lists of food that are high fiber, or that give you the most nutrients for the density of that product. In other words, are you getting the biggest nutrient bang that you can from what you're taking in? Because everyone has different tastes. Everyone's taste buds are different. I would never tell you, oh, you got to eat so many apples, you got to eat so many this, so many that. I think that's unreasonable for most people. I would say that you need to look at the foods that you eat now, look those up, see what type of nutrients and fibers are in those. And then I would look at foods that you tend not to eat that you're willing to try. I mean, that's fun and interesting, and may create opportunities you had no idea about.
Right.
So, and nowadays, you know, you can go to a grocery store, or you can go online and get almost anything you want.
Right.
The opportunities in this way, technology has made things better.
Sure. So last time you spoke about a principle, which I think sort of, you know, the Rambam also speaks about kind of eating when you're hungry. So do you still, are you still saying the same thing? You're giving us.
Right. I didn't mention that. I did mention the last time we spoke that if you are not hungry, even though it's, quote, time to eat, you have two options: either to eat a very small amount at that time, and truly a small amount, not the normal amount that you would eat, or not eat at all and eat when you're hungry, but not wait, not let that time go by so that you are too ravenous when it comes time to eat.
Mm-hmm.
You need to pay attention to your body. It's the same thing. If you need to empty your bowels or empty your bladder, you should not put it off for any reason.
Right.
You should find time to do that.
That's actually a mitzvah. It's a negative commandment to hold it in. And so I saw from the very interesting recently from the Baal Shem Tov, he speaks about it having very bad spiritual effects to kind of be constipated. So I don't know. That's interesting. Certainly brought down what's interesting in terms of halacha, brings down about the importance of fiber. And it brings down the idea of never holding it in. I believe that you could say this better than me, but I believe that actually expands the bladder, and then later in life it can lead to some kind of incontinence.
Yes, there are cases where there's bladder dysfunction as one ages because of continual stretching of the bladder. And actually there's a similar application with regards to diverticuli in the colon. The people who tend to be more constipated for a longer period of time tend to have more diverticuli, or bulging out areas in the colon, certain areas, because of the pressure that's remained there, and that puts them at higher risk for sources of infection, diverticulitis.
Right.
Yeah, so there are applications to that as well.
Right.
And you could make the same application with regards to emotional health as well. If you have something that's on your mind that's at least semi-reasonable, you should be able to express that in a safe environment. And that's a lot healthier.
Right. Okay, so one final question on the food, and of course drink. Last time you mentioned very important that we drink 70% of the body is water. And if the urine is a little yellow, it's time to drink more. And
Right.
water is the best option. But in terms of if you can call it the data, why is it important? Basically the way we've been structured in the Western world is kind of eating at specific times. And what you're recommending really is eat more when you're hungry, have healthy food more when you're hungry. So why is that important?
Because part of our obesity problem, not the whole problem, but part of the problem now is not only access to food and access to high glycemic food and low density food, but also because we get in the habit of eating 3 meals a day, no matter whether we're hungry or not.
Interesting.
And we're also in the habit of eating everything that is in front of us.
Interesting.
For multiple reasons.
Mm-hmm.
But we need to retrain ourselves oftentimes if we're not disciplined when we become adults with regards to our eating habits.
Mm-hmm.
And discipline means that, okay, it's time for a meal. Am I going to be eating that by myself or with other people? If it's required that I be social at this time, then I need to be disciplined about how I eat and what I eat and so on.
Right.
If I'm going to be eating by myself and I'm not hungry, then I can either choose to eat a very small amount so I don't get hungry later, or wait until I'm hungry, but immediately eat at that time and not wait and put that off and become more hungry.
Now, when you said fiber before, you said fiber, then you said vegetables.
Right.
What do you define as a fiber food in terms?
Right. So fiber is divided into soluble and non-soluble fiber. That's
fancy.
It's actually quite accurate from a biological point of view. And if something is soluble, that means it can be more readily mixed in a liquid. Insoluble means something's less readily mixed in a liquid. I hate to make this analogy, but a picture tells 1,000 words. So forgive me if I offend any of your audience, but this was really made clear to me when I was visiting the Kansas City Zoo 20 years ago, and I watched some large animal move their bowels, and I saw what came out, and there was, twigs and grass. It just came out, or hay and so on. That's insoluble fiber. And that type of thing attracts the less insoluble within your bowels and acts sort of like as a magnet to draw all that out so it doesn't get bundled up and hard. And so that's insoluble fiber. Soluble fiber tends to be more dissolvable and has more caloric value. And now on the hand, you may think that's good, but not necessarily. You may want to try to have more insoluble fiber so that you're filling your tummy up with something, but it's less likely to add calories if you're trying to maintain a certain weight or lose weight.
Right.
So again, I encourage people to look those things up. What are the foods that they eat? What is the soluble fiber content? What's the insoluble fiber content? And so on.
So can you give us an example just of maybe a soluble fiber food that's good that we can use?
Well, again, I'm encouraging you to think about insoluble, but—
Oh, sorry, insoluble, I made a mistake.
Yeah. So believe it or not, I would say apples and cantaloupe are probably have good amounts of insoluble. The other things that are very good with insoluble would be like Brussels sprouts, coleslaw, cauliflower, broccoli. Those type of things tend to have insoluble fiber. There are certain types of wheat that have fiber, but they tend to be more soluble fiber.
So most of our fiber, you're saying, should actually be insoluble fiber?
If possible, yes.
Right.
Not completely, not 100%, but right. More is probably better.
Right. So it's such an interesting thing, because maybe we'll speak soon about the spirituality of life, but basically getting rid of the garbage is very important. Just like in psychologically, half the battle is like the HR, knowing what not to keep in your system. So what you're saying really is like, these are the things that help you get rid of the garbage.
Right, and again, like Yetzer Hara and Yetzer Tov, an individual thing is not bad. It's when individual bad things clump up and stay there. Right. So you want to have a steady flow, if possible. Right.
Okay, so in summary, I just want to keep the KISS principle. What you're teaching is as follows. Basically, focus on the fibrous foods, vegetables, lots of different kind of healthy things in the vegetables, protein. How much protein would you say a person needs a day?
So that sort of depends, again, on the person. Do they have any health problems or not? But that number is anywhere between 40 and 60 grams of protein.
How much, out of interest, is, let's say, a chicken breast? How many grams of protein?
I don't have that off the top of my head, but if you want to,
look it up.
Anyone can look that up. I can't.
Okay, no problem. Everybody's going to have to look this stuff up, and then some fruits and vegetables.
Right.
So it's a very healthy, very balanced diet, and basically wait for when you're hungry. Don't overeat. You don't have to kind of have this. There's a big thing in Jewish mysticism is don't be a slave to the culture. So many cultures have ways that they eat. So if we were in Italy, we'd be taking siestas, and that would be like Kodesh Kodashim, holy of holies, 2 hours we have to eat now at lunch. So we have to kind of, as a Rambam, as you know, he had tremendous, importance in his diet. And he actually went so far to say, if you eat healthy, he guarantees you'll never get sick. It's amazing the data that's coming out from the CDC, from Harvard, of what's preventable through healthy eating. So we discussed exercise, about 30 minutes a day, and you should build up a sweat. We discussed healthy eating, which is make sure you're getting about 40 grams, particularly of insoluble fiber. Look it up. We discussed having some vegetables, some protein, as well as some fruits and vegetables in that order. So let's go to the mental side of life.
Before you do that, Rabbi Zev, you reminded me of something that I wanted to draw your audience to as for an analogy. Forgive me for interrupting. I apologize. With this COVID pandemic that we've had, who are the people that are at highest risk of passing away from COVID-19? Not only the elderly, but the obese and those who are obese with diabetes.
Right.
And so when such maladies affect large populations of people, this is another argument for smart eating, smart sleeping, smart exercising.
So important, so important. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's really, it's like, it's so simple, but I think it's such an important thing is that we are a composite of a body and a soul. And we have to basically really care for both of them. And the body is the house of the soul. And if you're living in a place that, you know, you don't take care of it, so the leaks are going to start coming and things are going to start breaking. And I think that's one of the things, I don't know what your thought is, but I have this theory is that we have to teach people that the body is not what you see it is. It's constantly recreating itself. You know, we're losing 1 to 2 million red blood cells every second and gaining 1 to 2 million red blood cells every second. Your skin is entirely new in 2 weeks. All the dust you see in the air is basically skin cells. So what that means is your body is always repairing itself. Imagine living in a house that every 2 weeks it was being rebuilt. Now, ask yourself a question. Do you want to use good bricks or bad bricks? And I think that if we had that analogy, what are your thoughts on that concept of just reshaping our brains to understand this is actually something that is actually cycling, it's repairing itself, it's literally rebuilding itself, and therefore the materials you use really, really matter.
I don't see any flaw with that thinking at all.
Okay, good.
That's my best answer. I see no flaw with that thinking at all. It's interesting, what you reminded me of when you were saying that is that most types of cancer that most people die from cancer is the body's inability at active surveillance at looking for cells that are not following the rules of the body. And those cells that don't follow the rules of the body, if they reproduce, can lead to pushing other normal cells out of the way. And that's to a large extent of what happens in cancer. There are many other factors, but the body is constantly surveilling itself to look for these bad actors, or the body's terrorists, if you want to call that. Right. And so the body's doing that naturally. So you want to make sure the body is as healthy as possible. You know, some of these things are pre-programmed. We can't put these things off. This is just what is going to happen with us. But the better we treat ourselves, the less likely this is to happen.
Right, right.
It's not that it's not going to happen.
Right.
No one should ever think that.
Right,
but it's less likely.
Right, exactly. Basically, the Rebbe gives an analogy with a mezuzah, that the mezuzah offers you protection. So does it mean if I didn't have a mezuzah, I'm punished? No, he says that if you go to war and you're wearing a helmet, your option of basically, if God forbid a bullet hits you, of being protected is much better. And the same thing I think is, nobody can predict 100% that, you know, certain cancers, like you said, and this is also something very interesting, I think many of us don't know, but basically we're all getting cancer all the time and we're just killing it. The body's killing cancer. And so cancer, in a way, it's almost like bacteria in the air. The body is just busy killing it. So we have this tremendous gift called an immune system, which, I don't know, I mean, if a person didn't have an immune system, can I ask, how long would they not survive?
They would die in childhood.
Childhood, right. So it's like, it's just such an important function. And so in a way that leads us to the next element of the conversation, which is kind of, let's call it mental emotional health, because we now know for sure that stress causes cortisol, causes a reaction, it weakens the immune system. I don't know what you think about, but there are various theories that think that a lot of disease is actually a result of a weakened immune system. And so maybe we can talk about, okay, so, and this is, it's just an epidemic. Certainly COVID gave an, you know, in the news, gave an epidemic of stress. I couldn't believe recently I saw 50% of America has anxiety. We're one of the better off countries in the world. So what does that mean for other countries? So, okay, how do we overcome anxiety?
So the simple answer is you should fill your time with things that make your body healthy. You're not going to get rid of anxiety.
Yeah.
But the more time you spend taking care of yourself, the less time you will have to ruminate or think, was this right? Could this be better? Am I doing this correctly? Et cetera, et cetera. You will be able to trust more that your behavior with regards to discipline of eating, discipline of exercise, discipline of sleep, and hopefully discipline of what comes out of your mouth, as far as speech goes, is going to, it's like playing the odds. Odds are in your favor if you focus on those things, and it doesn't give you as much time to ruminate, which ultimately is a non-productive, generally a non-productive process.
Right. It's an interesting thing. What made you, what you sort of reminded me of is that Israelis happen to be from the happiest people. And one of the things about Israelis is they're very like tachlis. Everything's about like action orientated. And so I think that what you're saying is that basically, if I can kind of rephrase it, is that in the West that we have it so good, often we're just like, we're spoiled. We have too much time to think about ourselves and think about, I mean, in countries, I lived in Africa for many years, and the very poor blacks there, they're actually quite happy because maybe they're so busy doing work, running to this, running to that, they don't have time to think about their tzaddus and to make this wheel turn. And so if I could also correlate that in Judaism, I once went to my Zaidi. He was over 90. He was retired for many years. I said, Zaidi, are you busy? He was learning some Torah. I wanted to speak to him. He said, a Yid is alamo fanumen. A Jew is always busy. So the word for fun isn't in the Hebrew dictionary. In fact, according to Judaism, there's an absolute halacha, a law. There's no such thing as free time. If you have free time, go learn Torah. So in Judaism, the idea of my goal is to get onto vacation, my goal is to retire, my goal is to basically chill out, it doesn't exist. Your goal is to do the next best thing in life. And if we kind of really rewire ourselves and say, and I think it's based, if I could just digress for a second, because I just want to offer people wisdom and maybe it's connected. I think it's based on, we come from a secular culture, which I think is from either Roman or Greek kind of thinking. And basically it's based on one idea, which is what's in it for me. But the truth of the matter is, if we come from Jewish thinking, it's a very different question. It's like, what's in it for God? What does God want from me? What's my purpose of being on this planet? And once you answer that question, it means you have a mission, you're important, you can make a difference. If you have nothing else to do, you can pray, you can study Torah, and even making lots of money is a great thing because you can give lots of charity. In other words, we become purpose and mission orientated. And I really like what you said, which is, how do you get over anxiety? You get over anxiety by being proactive. And instead of us and also we have such a the way we're raising our kids in the West with democracy, I think we've brought on this idea, oh, you can't tell anyone what to do. The poor kid has to play PlayStation for 14 hours a day. No, tell your kid to do something good. Let your kid know that he's here for a mission. He has a purpose in this world. And so this kind of notion is very, very critical. There's a lady, she just wrote a book called What Would You Do If You Weren't Afraid? Michal Ashman. And basically she's this high-powered executive in Facebook and TikTok and all this stuff, but she was really suffering from anxiety terribly her whole life. And what turned her around when she got involved in Jewish mysticism was realizing she has a soul, and realizing that actually that sometimes anxiety could be the Yetzer Hara. They're actually negative forces. We would call it like a demon, which you can't see, but it's trying to actually psych you out and make you feel guilty and all this stuff. And realizing that she has a purpose. And then as she refocused her life in terms of what does Judaism tell her her mission is, embracing herself, let's say in her case, as a mother, as a wife, and as instead of looking at her work only as an income, but also as an output. How am I helping the people that I'm working with? So you see this amazing person suffering from terrible, terrible anxiety, crippling anxiety, really amazing. I mean, I don't know if you ever get rid of it totally, but she now is happy. She has this purposeful life. So, you know, did I sum up a little bit what were you saying, or would you adjust it?
What you said definitely resonated with me. Actually, the most anxiety for me, for me, is when I feel I have too much free time, where I haven't allocated what is my purpose at this time during the day or the evening.
Wow.
That creates the most anxiety for me, that I'm not doing something with purpose. Now, do you want to become obsessive about it? No, you want to be focused on it, but you don't want to become obsessive about it, because that could mean that you will eliminate social interaction with other people because you're so focused on this. So like anything in life, it's a balance.
Right.
But for me, if I have days where I'm not doing anything at all, that actually creates anxiety for me.
Sure, sure. Let me ask you a question, because that reminded me, we have a lot of people, you know, the Rebbe had a philosophy. Those that don't know, Lubavitch Rebbe was one of the great Jewish leaders of our century. And he had a philosophy which retirement is not in his dictionary. He really believed that man is here to work, to be productive, not necessarily work for someone else, but to work for God, to do good. And he literally didn't take off a day. He probably didn't take off a minute, certainly not an hour. And but we have a culture that really maybe even forces people into retirement. And I actually feel very bad, because you have these people, many of them doctors, that are very smart. They have tremendous amounts to contribute. And to me, it's like very sad. Like I maybe visit the nursing home, you really see very competent people, and they're just like cycling through time. So I don't know if you have any thoughts.
I do, and I think part of it has to do with nomenclature, what we call retirement. So retirement may mean that you stop doing what you were doing that was very productive, but that doesn't mean that you stop doing anything and everything. You may just enter a different phase of your life that involves doing. And there is an analogy to this. One of the well-known social psychologists, I think it was Kohlberg, but I'm not sure, Kohlberg, that stated that as one gets older, one reaches a phase in one's life where where the phase is you're giving back, so that you're mentoring others, you're teaching others, or if you're fortunate enough to be wealthy enough, you're giving back financially in some way. So that just because you're not doing what people recognize that you did for the majority of your life, you can call that retirement, but that doesn't mean that you're not working. So again, I come back to the word nomenclature. In other words, the labeling of it. I don't think that's bad. I think when someone's retired, doesn't mean that they should stop doing everything that they do. They just need to change, or what are their goals going to be in life at that time.
Right, right. So, okay, I think we've covered a couple of topics. I want to sum it up. And very, very simple, actually, all of this. And really, I think if anybody does just what we've said here, they'll have an amazing life. It's kind of...
And that's very, very bold statement. I would like to think they would have an improved life. You know, it's always good to, what's the word? Set the expectations low and deliver high. So,
well, I'm in the game of getting people excited so they start taking action. So that's my goal here. So anyway, so the couple of things that we said is, first of all, sleep is very important. And we said this last time, I'll just reiterate it. is that a lot of our issue with sleep is we're too obsessed with the media. And also something you mentioned last time, which I think is really important, is such an important thing. Don't feel you have to reply to someone's text. There are studies that show people would rather get a reply later that's better than earlier than that's worse. So people want you to take the time, reply in the most cognitive way, the way that's going to make the most sense. Nobody is expecting you to be at their beck and call. And if they are, you definitely should reply later, double as time. So the point is, we're all individuals, and our time really must be, we are in charge of our time. That's really all we have is time. And so,
and I would add that we must recognize others' time as well.
Yes.
And I think because of our technology, we tend to do that less.
Right. Be cognizant that you may be stepping into their space now. Okay, well said. Very important. Yeah, it's a whole new world of etiquette, which a lot of us don't know. I mean, it hasn't been defined. I mean, etiquette was defined over thousands of years, and now there's like a new kind of etiquette. So sleep is really important, and we all know blue light affects you, so you should really get rid of the technology maybe an hour or two before. Certainly you shouldn't have blue light, obviously caffeine, but what you're saying is sleep is important. You know, Dr. Simon was telling me the 700 sleep benefits or something like that. The next thing is exercise, right? We know for diabetes, many things, exercise at least 30 minutes and make a sweat. And I mean, I'm pretty good at walking every day, usually about half hour, but I am not so good at building up that sweat. You really have to do that because, you know, it gets that blood flow pumping. It makes you smarter. You can just feel your brain smarter. Then I would say water, super important, also for the brain. Then eating healthy, which you defined, or let's say we defined as basically 40 grams, particularly of insoluble fiber, which keeps the system flowing. And then vegetables, and then protein. You said about 40 grams of protein, if I recall. And then a little bit of fruit. Is that because of the fructose of the fruit? Is that the issue with fruit?
No, it has other sources of fiber in and of itself. And there are some desires for sweet things, and that's one way of getting some sweet. And
right.
Just acknowledging, okay, that was nice, that was fun. That's
right. What's your feeling on sugar, if I can ask you?
It's like anything else. If it enhances what you're eating, that's fine. But but like anything else, you don't want to be addicted to it.
Right. Right.
Nothing wrong with that.
Okay. And so, okay, so that's it. And finally with food is don't overeat. Basically, when you're hungry, eat, and don't feel compelled by the social structure to eat 3 times a day. And that's just such a healthier way. It's very interesting because after our last talk, I took you mainly focused on, you know, listening to your body. And one of the things that was fascinating to me was I noticed that often when I would go eat, I was actually thirsty. I think a lot of us don't recognize that. We're like going for the food, but we're not paying attention to the body. The body's telling you you're thirsty, but you're just like, you know, something's going on. You're just going for food.
That's wonderful. You were listening to your body, and you're listening to messages that you had long forgotten, but you were able to listen to. So that's wonderful.
Right. Probably since the age of 1. So now we also discuss stress. And I think what you said about stress is very, very critical, super critical. And it's something, to be perfectly frank, I've never heard it discussed before. And it's just so simple. It's something that I do know a little bit about the topic. And that is, we're stressed because we are ruminating. Instead of being focused on positive action, what is my mission in my life? Go learn some Torah, go make some money to help some people, go take care of the dishes for your wife, go do something. We're so busy thinking. And I don't know, I mean, I can't say this, that studies show, but I just mentioned about the Israelis, that Israelis we know are happier people, that we have a lot of evidence in different countries that. And one of the things about them is they can't stand wasting time. They can't handle it. They have to be active all the time. So obviously it can, like you said, it can get to the addiction stage. You know, you have to be able to calm down and hang out with friends. But I think in the West, I think in a way it's actually we're like babies. We're a little spoiled. And we have to kind of realize that we're here for a purpose, and we got to get with the program. We got to like take our lives and our mission serious. And that's also, I think, very important for self-esteem. In other words, life is not here to give you what you want, and you're not a victim if you didn't get it. You're here to make life a better world. When God made Adam and Eve, he says, you're here to make this beautiful world. You've already gotten so much. And if you're alive and if you're in America today, you are very, very lucky, probably luckier than most people in the world. You're here to make it better. And think about your mission, not what you don't have, but why you are here. How are you going to make this world a better place? And guaranteed, if that's what you're thinking about, that's what you're focused on, then you don't have time for the negative. You're in the positive. Okay, doctor, you're smiling. Why?
I'm smiling because that was the message that I got repeatedly from my mother and my aunt.
Oh, really?
And they didn't say it was Jewish or anything like that, but that was the message that I always got.
Yeah,
they happened to go to a Talmud Torah and they were raised that way, but yes,
right.
That message resonates with me. It also reminds me a little bit of sort of dogs, because dogs live in the moment. Very few dogs have anxiety,
right,
and so on, or at least obvious anxiety,
right.
Unless they're traumatically abused in some way. But otherwise, it's natural for dogs to be busy, do things, and live in the moment.
Right.
And not worry about what if.
Yeah. So that's a big thing, living in the moment. And I think if you have a purpose, it helps you live in the moment, because, I do, if I could use myself as an example, I have a blog, and I guess it's my field. I write a little bit of Jewish mysticism and I teach, and I don't really get paid for that, but it makes me feel purposeful. And so it gives me a sense of purpose. Now, it took me a very long time to realize that I have a skill set in it. Really, I would say with God's help, that a friend of mine showed me how to make a blog. But I think that if we ask ourselves one question, which is, in what way can I make the world a better place? I think you'll come to where your mission lies. And then you just have to not worry about what other people will say, because that's a big thing that keeps people back. Oh, what this guy, they're going to make fun of me. What matters is your output. Doesn't matter so much the input, but the output. And so if you can get yourself to that stage where, okay, what is the thing that I can enhance the world most with? Then I think you really discovered your mission. And then just do it. Don't worry about what other people are going to say. And it takes also kind of self-discipline. That's something you mentioned last time. And self-discipline, I want to mention a technique if I can. This was from the previous Rebbe. He says that the way Hashem made us, the way God made us, is we can tell ourselves what to do. So if I say, Zevi, go to the kitchen now. So, and if that doesn't work, I can shout at myself. It's like a dog in a way. If you shout at the dog, he begins to listen. And eventually the dog realizes who's the master. So you got to kind of teach your own body that you are the master, and that can come from this little technique. And I'm wondering if you have any kind of final thoughts.
I think the natural state of the human body is not to be productive, interestingly enough.
Right.
But the natural state of the brain and the soul is probably to be productive.
Right.
So you have this constant contrast.
Yes.
To use this element that you're within in a way that will be good for both. And there's this constant tension. I think that's unique about being human, quite honestly. And how well you can use that tension to your advantage. I think so it resonated with me, something that you said. I did not, while I grew up and learned how to lay tefillin, I did not lay tefillin on a regular basis. And at some point, maybe 20 years ago, I started laying tefillin only when I went on vacation. I obviously, besides days where I had to say I had yard site for a family member or something like that. Mm-hmm. And when COVID began, I started laying tefillin in the morning.
Right.
Now, I would always say Shema in the evening. That's easy. That's no big deal. But I think what I learned from that and continue to learn is that that's a repetition of one's one's mission statement, both individual mission statement and group mission statement, the Shema. And I find that that has an anxiety reducing effect for me as well.
Yeah.
And sort of a resetting of what I need to do for the day. And something about what you were saying sort of made me think about that.
You know, I'm glad you mentioned that, because I've realized the power of prayer for calming us down. And there's a guy, his name is Dr. Trachtman. Without getting into too much detail, like you, he was a doctor in the Army, optometrist or ophthalmologist, and he also has a PhD in experimental psychology. And so he developed this device from NASA, amazing device that can help people. I should maybe show it to you, maybe get involved, but he did it with me, amazing. It like puts you in the alpha frequency. And those that know about the alpha frequency, basically we have the beta frequency, which is more of an anxious state, and the alpha frequency, which is more of a calm state. And it does it through kind of relaxing the eye muscles, very sophisticated little device. So I said, okay, so how do we do this all the time? And we all know that the alpha frequency helps you with, you know, health and meditation and learning. It's just a calmer state. So he said an amazing thing. He said, all you need to do is say Shemoneh Esrei. For listeners that don't know, that's our daily prayer. And I realized, I think that the power of repeating words, especially holy words and good words, is that I think that the brain is kind of like you were speaking about ruminating. The brain is in a little bit of like maybe a...
The brain likes to ruminate for most people. Most people like to ruminate, and this eliminates that, at least temporarily, for a reasonable amount of time.
Right, right. So you've temporarily put your frequency in a better space. And by doing that, I think you just give yourself a little bit of tranquility that helps the rest of the day. And of course, and this is something that I write in my course, and I've suggested it to many people, and I do it, and we mentioned this last time, and it's very powerful, is that the first thing you do when you wake up is you thank Hashem for 10 blessings. Because as soon, and you had mentioned last time also about gratitude, because, you know, if what, like you said, by nature, we're a little bit, let's say, lazy or anxious, but if...
And not gracious in general.
Right. Basically selfish, if we had to say that. So we have this war. We've got this godly soul. There's a part of us, the soul and the mind, which is amazing. Every human being wants the world to be an amazing place. On the other hand, we have this body, which is like a little dog. What's in it for me? And I want it now. So when you wake up in the morning and you say to Hashem, you say to God, thank you, and just think of your top 10 blessings, whether it's your wife and your kids, and we have so much to be grateful for. So there's a famous story about a psychiatrist that he was called to deal with a lady. She wanted to jump out in New York, you know, out of an 80th story. So after he heard her story, he thought, I want to jump too. So he thought, okay, how do I help this lady? So he said to her, imagine for a moment you're blind. Can you imagine? So she said, yes. He says, now imagine a miracle happened and you can see. How do you feel? She says, I feel amazing. So that's the thing, that we already have things that we take for granted, but these are so great that you give everything away just for sight. Who wouldn't give all their wealth just to be able to see? So the point is that Hashem, God made us in this way. He gave us an ego or a body that wants more, but the soul and the brain needs exercises to induce these happiness feelings, which then take us throughout the day. And that's why I think what you're kind of referring to, when you put on the tefillin in the morning, when you say the Shema, when you say gratitude in the morning, what happens is you bring that joy into your day. And then if you face the exact same set of circumstances, but you start off happier, your ability, like you're saying with sleep, your ability to cope with them and to be cognitively smart about them is so much better. So I think that that's one of the secrets of Judaism. And this is, even if a person's not Jewish and they're watching, you can certainly take the secret, is you have to make times for prayer. I don't know if you know this, doctor, but there's an argument in the Talmud about what is the most important verse of the Torah. You know this one. So it comes out the most important verse of the Torah is offering a sacrifice in the morning and in the afternoon, right? You would say, love your fellow Jew, right? Shema Yisrael, Aneich Hashem Lekecha, I am God. But no, and it's such an interesting thing. And last time you also spoke about this, that in Judaism, we place our emphasis on action more than belief. It's an amazing religion, really, because you just do these things. Ah, good Jew. But the point is, because the action itself really is more important than the thought, because the thought can come and go. But if every single day, even if it's for 5 minutes, you make a time to be grateful, or as a Jew, let's say you put on tefillin and you say the Shema in the morning, Shema in the evening, it really, and I've suggested this to ladies. There's this one Jewish lady, she didn't have a great background, but she was a doctor, a very special woman. I told her about saying the Shema, and it really brought her a sense of peace. So I think that, like we've discussed many things, the importance of sleep, of healthy eating, and the data is very strong in terms of how many illnesses it prevents. And like we said before, we're always killing cancer cells. We need the strength, the body, basically water, getting over stress through positive action. And also, we've just really mentioned one other thing, which is taking time for gratitude or taking time for prayer. And I would just suggest to both Jews and Gentiles, as Jews, we have 613 mitzvahs. Everything you add into your schedule will bring you a little bit more joy. And we believe that the Gentiles have 7 Noahide laws. Also, creating that stability, saying that God has given me laws. I think it's really important because, like children, they really want boundaries. And I don't think we're that much different from children. We also need boundaries. And when we know this is right and that is wrong, and we're able to kind of say, okay, I'm doing the right thing, I think that also helps us a lot. And I think that maybe a lot of the anxiety today is because a lot of people are not brought up with religion. So they're like unsure of right and wrong. So they don't have that inner sense of, okay, I'm a good person because I'm within this frame of reference. I don't know if you have any thoughts of that on that.
I don't, but so that I can exercise in time, I'm going to have to excuse myself and and make myself available the next time for you. I would also say there is one biological comparative to what you said about prayer. Exercising for a minimum of 30 minutes allows the release of one's own equivalent of heroin, not in enough that puts you to sleep, but puts you in a heightened sense of cognitive skill and puts you in a heightened sense of being less likely to ruminate. And so there are biological imperatives from exercising 30 minutes that enhance your functioning ability.
Wow.
Just leave it at
that. Does that have to be like kind of sweat-based exercise?
Probably. I don't know the exact answer, but my gut hunch is yes.
Right.
Yeah, no, it doesn't mean you have to sweat a lot, but you got to sweat. Okay.
Right.
You know,
Okay.
whatever.
You got to schwitz.
So all right, Rabbi Zev.
I want to say thank you very much to Dr. Sokol. And I think, can we call this the Dr. Sokol protocol?
Whatever you wish.
And we appreciate very much the time and the wisdom. And I just want to say to all the listeners, everything we said only will work if you do it. So it's like a prescription, you got to do it. You want to give everybody a bracha. They say there's an angel with a doctor that helps the doctor heal. So maybe your angel can come along, give maybe a bracha for everybody.
That would be nice.
Okay.
Nice. All right. Thank you so much.
Okay. All the best. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.